Hello, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in between and beyond. My name's Jordy Coleman. You can call me Ginger Wolf. And welcome to our Let's Laugh for Louis C.K. Now, more importantly, before addressing any of the elephants in the room when it comes to talking about Louis C.K., I do have something that I would also like to let you guys know about. As of Tuesday, I started a cancer fundraiser, and I would actually like to give a quick shout out to Alex Murray, if I can pronounce his name right, for actually being the first donator to our to this particular cause. Now, just in case you guys are wondering, because I am aware that there have been some sketchy fundraising stuff in this day and age of YouTube. I'm going to let you guys know I do not accept any of the donations myself. Everything goes directly to the Crest Cancer Institution. This is actually the web page they helped me set up. There is a link to it in the description below. By all means, give it a look. If you are not able to donate right this second, that is okay. This is going until the end of February. I know you're thinking, oh, we just passed February. Yes, that means that I am doing this for just shy of a year. And this is something that I've been talking about and discussing and whatnot for actually quite some time. And just so that you guys are also aware, 100%. This has nothing to do with, sorry, before I get into that, I am shaving my head for this. And just in case somebody's going, hey, um, your long hair is kind of a bit of your branding, aren't you worried about that? I understand that, everything like that. But truth be told, 100% of the matter is, this is more important than my image. This is more important than anything. This is our opportunity to hopefully do something good in this world. And I'm sorry, but that trumps anything when it comes to my personal image or my personal branding or anything like that. That all out of the way, let's get into Louis C.K. Now, of course, we have to talk about the sexual misconduct stuff. Before I get into that, Um, Louis C.K. is a little bit different than some of the other. Okay, I'm just going to straight up say it. This is different than Bill Cosby for a lot of reasons. Number one, I was a gigantic fan of Bill Cosby before all the sexual misconduct stuff came out because I grew up watching it with my grandfather. I did not grow up watching Louis C.K. with my grandfather. Don't get me wrong, still think he's funny, but it wasn't as earth shattering to find out that he was doing what he was doing as it was Bill Cosby. As well, much different set of circumstances as well, because as it's been joked about and everything like that, Louis C.K.'s case, at least he was asking. We can say at least that much. Now, my personal thoughts on it are kind of irrelevant because I am not a victim of his. I am not a super fan of his. I am not, I'm just somebody who enjoys stand up comedy, and he's somebody who happens to come up a lot. My personal opinion on the matter is fairly irrelevant, truth to be completely told. But I will say that in this day and age of how many people are being caught in sexual misconduct aspects, at least he never tried to cover it up and hide it. Matter of fact, a lot of comics came forward afterwards basically saying how this was kind of a well-known thing amongst everybody. Like, nobody kept it a secret. Louis C.K. liked to jerk off in front of people. You know, there's female comics, there was things like that. And regardless of where you sit on the fence, whether you feel he was punished too poorly, maybe he wasn't punished enough, maybe you sit right in the middle where he should have been punished and he was punished, and you're happy with the amount of punishment that he got. Regardless of what it was, in my opinion, and this is the important factor, is that he should not have put himself in that situation. Plain and simple. If you're a famous person and you have some sort of kink, keep it to the people that you love, trust, and you respect, but they also respect you. Keep it to that kind of group of people. Once you start going outside that group of people, you start getting into problems. So the fact that he put himself into that situation in the first place, I think you see where I'm going here. Anyway, that all being said, that is not what we are here. We are here to talk about Louis C.K.'s own professionalism. Ooh, God, let's turn the notifications off my phone. Apologies for that. And just in case we get a phone call, we'll turn the ringer off as well. As far as Louis C.K. goes himself, as a stand-up comic and everything like that, I don't think he's a bad stand-up comic whatsoever. As a matter of fact, he kind of has a lot of things about comedy things in his act about comedy that I think are both well overdue, both very important. Sorry, I'm a little bit gassy right this second. My apologies. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of aspects to his particular style. Like, there was a thing he was talking about how he's changed his style, or not so much his style, but how he's kind of dug deeper to get more material and better material out of himself. And I agree with a lot of that. Um, Again, I'm trying not to praise him too highly because of some of his stuff, but or because of like the sexual misconduct stuff and stuff like that, but you know what I mean? It's a fine line to walk, and he makes it very difficult. Um, so let's get into some of his Wikipedia stuff. So first and foremost, of course, we're looking at this. I'm doing the Comedy Central's Top 100 Stand-Up Comedians when they released back when they released it, and he is the third. He would be number 98. Gallagher was number 100. Jeanine Garofalo was 99. And Louis C.K. here is number 98. He wasn't a huge name at the time. You know, if it would have been made 10 years later, because that was 2014, I believe. If it would have been made like 10 years later, he probably would have been ranked much higher on the thing. And to be fair, same thing with Jeanine Garofalo. I think a lot of the comics would have changed a lot of places because they hadn't done the things that had really made them famous by that point. Yes, he had been in Tomorrow Night, and I believe he had already hosted an episode of Saturday Night Live. I'm not 100% sure about that. And he had already been in Pootie Tang and Shoot Up and Shameless and stuff like that. But he wasn't the Louis C.K. we knew back in like 2020 even. So I was actually surprised to find out he's only 56 years old. If Wikipedia, granted, this is all Wikipedia, so you have to take everything Wikipedia says with a grain of salt. I did actually, full disclosure, um, the show Louie that he was on, I really enjoyed it. It now I might get my stand-up comic card revoked for saying this. Was never a huge fan of Seinfeld, the show in and of itself. Just because I was never really a huge fan of Seinfeld as a person. And as time has kind of carried on, I've become less of a fan of Seinfeld even over the years because of him talking about woke culture and a multitude of different things. But at the end of the day, what's important when it comes to a stand up comic is their material. And for what it's worth, I don't think his material is the greatest material ever. I do like a little bit more cynicality into my material. I do like a little more, like, Jerry Seinfeld himself has even said that his material is basically the stuff in between what you talk about with your friends. And that is very, very, very true. But that also means that that particular stuff tends to be a little on the dull side. Now, the reason why I bring up Seinfeld, more specifically, I wanted to highlight the show Seinfeld. The reason why I bring up the show Seinfeld is because of one simple thing. It's supposed to be a show about nothing. Seinfeld was never a show about nothing. I'm sorry to disappoint people when I say that, but it was a very clearly structured show. It had a beginning, middle, end. It had a first act, it had a second act, it had a third act, it had a conclusion. It was a plot driven show. It was never a show about nothing. If they would have. Now, granted, I will say, it sounds better than it's a show about how a comedian comes up with his material. That is a little more acceptable. Not quite as ear grabbing, not quite as attention grabbing, admittedly speaking. Louie, on the other hand, was quite literally a show about nothing. It was just, granted, it was as close to reality TV show as we've ever really gotten when it comes to reality TV shows. Even though it is written, it is a written show, it is, but it's very much a day in the life. It's just a day in the life of Louie. He goes to the doctor, and then at the end of it, he goes to his daughter's recital. There's no beginning, middle, and end. That is unless you're going to put a camera on a bottle of mayonnaise, that is the closest you're going to get to a show about nothing. Would be Louie. And it's still a cohesive show. So I will say, and as much as it is praise for the show Louie, it is really good. I will also add, and this is something that's going to come up far, 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 far later down the road when we get on the subject of Doug Stanhope. But Doug Stanhope has a cameo in that show. And even Robin Williams made a mention about Doug Stanhope's cameo on the show, where Doug Stanhope was basically an alcoholic, down on his luck stand-up comedian, never really caught a break or anything like that, and he kills himself in the show. And I hope YouTube isn't going to be too much of a pain in the ass for me because I said that, but he does. And there's a part in it where he's telling Louie, and he's like, I'm doing this, and Louie's like, you can't do it, and he's like, why? Like, literally give me a reason. And he's like, he literally can't give him a reason. And then he says, so why are you telling me this if you've already made up your mind? And he's like, I just kind of wanted somebody to say goodbye to. That moment right fucking there in a show that essentially is the closest show we're ever going to get, probably, but definitely the closest we've ever gotten to a show about nothing. Right there shows that even in a show that is just a day in the life of, you can deal with real shit. And you can also not only deal with real shit, but show that in dealing with real shit, everything doesn't have to end with a happy ending. You know, when you watch that episode, you watch Doug Stanhope's character driving away in that piece of shit beaten up car. You know what's happening once the credits roll. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a happy feeling. And I have no idea who wrote that and how much influence everybody had on it, but every single person who was involved in that particular scene in that particular show earns nothing but praise for me, because that was a darkly beautiful moment in television history. Period. But we've gone into the dark stuff and everything like that a little bit too much. It does so very early on in his Wikipedia article here. It was 2017 when he admitted to several incidents of sexual misconduct following the release of an article in the New York Times. I wasn't even sure. I wasn't even aware that it was New York Times that broke that story. And resulted in widespread criticism and caused him the 2017 film I Love You Daddy to be pulled from distribution prior to its release. In 2018, he returned to stand-up comedy. In 2019, he announced an international tour, and he also released a special, Seriously, Louis C.K. and Sorry, on his website. That is a thing, too, I will point out. Because of what happened, um, the likelihood of any of Louis C.K.'s stand-up specials going forward getting onto um, like Netflix or um, Hulu or Amazon or anything like that, almost nothing. There's probably never going to be another Louis C.K. Stand-up special on a streaming network because of his sexual misconduct stuff. However, that doesn't mean we're never going to get another Louis C.K. special, because he's releasing pretty much everything independently now through his website. And I think about that in this sense. Yes, that is more difficult to do as a creative person, to release everything completely independently and not be able to. I mean, on a hypothetical note, he probably could have released it on YouTube, but it's not the same thing as releasing something completely independently. And that's what he's now doing. As much as it's probably more difficult and probably more expensive to start with, because you have to fund everything yourself, you have to do all the extra work yourself and everything like that. At the end of the day, if you're popular enough, and Louis C.K. is definitely popular enough, you end up making more money, because pretty much all that money just goes right back to you. And he did actually use, I'm not sure whether it was Seriously or Sorry, but he used a chunk of the money that he made from that to fund a movie, which I think was 4th of July. And, you know, that, in as much as something good can come from something horrible, at least on the end of the person that Louis C.K. is, it is something good that came at the end of all that darkness. Um, this is the part that I always find interesting, the career beginnings. In 1984, at 17, C.K. directed the comedic short film Trash Day. The New York University Tisch School of Arts showed an interest in him as a filmmaker, but he instead decided to pursue a career in stand-up comedy. CK's first attempt at stand-up comedy was in 1985 at an open mic night at a comedy club in Boston, Massachusetts, during the apex of the comedy boom. He was given 5 minutes of time, but only had 2 minutes of material, so he was so discouraged by the experience that he did not perform again for 2 years. That is actually something I hear a lot of huge comics talk about. Stephen Wright is a comedian who has talked about his first time on stage was so bad that he never wanted to go on stage again. There is a lot of comics that talk about their first time on stage was absolutely horrible, or if not their first experience on stage, their first, like early in their startings, they went on stage and it crashed and burned badly. And man, I have not just one, but several stories like that. Not gonna lie. But that being said, the difference between a person who has a shitty experience when it comes to stand-up comedy and somebody who has a shitty experience in stand-up comedy and keeps going, at the point now in my, not even the point in my career, the amount of experience that I have with stand-up comedy and meeting people in the world of stand-up comedy and stuff like that, you can very much tell when somebody is brand new and what it would take for somebody to just stop doing stand-up in an instant. You get a feel for that. And you want to, like, for me anyway, I want to be as give as much praise, because getting on stage to perform in front of people is fucking hard. I don't care what setting you're doing it in, whether you're a musician, whether you're an actor on stage at a play, whether you're a fucking stripper, whether you're a stand-up comic. And ironically, stripping and stand-up comedy are very intermingled if you look through the history of stand-up comedy, so that's not a mistake. But it's hard. It's hard because there's a lot of levels of going through getting actually on, because you have the doubt in yourself, and even if you can get past the doubt in yourself, you have the doubt in the subject matter that you're about to talk about. And even if you get past that, you have the doubt, is the audience going to understand what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to say? When you get to a point when you're a musician or a comedian and you're doing big sold out shows and venues and stuff like that, everybody's coming to see you. That is a vastly different thing. When you're just there and nobody's there to see you, it's nerve-wracking. And me personally, I've never really gotten a whole lot of stage fright. You get a little bit of nervousness and stuff like that, sure. I don't think that I would actually be more concerned for people who don't get that little bit of nervousness. But what's more concerning for me is, how is my material going to work when it comes to this particular audience? Are they going to love it? Are they going to hate it? And there have been times where I've scrapped entire chunks of comedy because a comedian before me was just was doing their thing on stage, and you know, maybe it was similar subject matter, and it just was not hitting. And I go, I'm not trying this material tonight, and I'll toss it aside and fall back on something that I know is tried, true, and tested. So it's very scary. But again, comedians are different because it very much becomes an addiction. It becomes an addiction to want to perform in front of people. Even for people, and you would be absolutely shocked. There was a comedian I was actually listening to an interview in, and they brought up stage fright, and he basically said, he's like, I have a simple fix for stage fright. I just take my glasses off. I can't see anything. That right there encapsulates how bad some comedians actually do get stage fright. A lot of people don't want to see, oh, comedians must be some of the bravest people in the world. They can say, a lot of them are shitting themselves where they're on stage trying to be funny. A lot of them are. And that's not something that necessarily goes away overnight. That's something that still keeps happening today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now. You get used to the feeling, but that feeling never quite goes away. Anyway, I want to kind of skipping down to throughout the spring of 20, not even the correct millennium, 1996, C.K. served as head writer for the Dana Carvey show. And its writers also included Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Robert Smigel, and Charlie Kaufman. Kaufman. And he also appears several times on the animated show Dr. Katz Professional Therapist, which is a show I have not. That's actually a show I thought I had made up for a while because I never heard anybody talking about it. I legitimately thought this show was fake. The only reason why I knew it wasn't fake was because South Park actually made a parody of it in their early days. And that was a thing that I was just like, oh my god, this is a real show. And it is. And it was like a blink and you miss it moment, at least for me at the time. But yeah, Louis C.K. also, I think, and it'll probably be later on in the down in here, but I think he was also a writer on The Simpsons as well, which that in and of itself kind of shows Louis C.K. does have a lot of talent as a comedic writer. I also realized I kind of jumped over this part here as Boston's comedy scene grew. Louis C.K. gradually achieved success performing alongside acts such as Denis Leary and Lenny Clark. And eventually he moved up to pay gigs, opening for Jerry Seinfeld and hosting comedy clubs. Okay, first and foremost, Lenny Clark, hugely underrated stand-up comedian. Hugely underrated. He is fucking hilarious. Very stereotypically Boston, but fucking hilarious. Denis Leary used to be a huge fan of his until I discovered Bill Hicks, and then realized that Denis Leary had basically pirated a shit ton of, and I use the term pirating instead of stealing, and I'll explain that in just one second. But he pirated a bunch of Bill Hicks's material. The reason why I say pirated instead of stealing it is because he did change a bit of it. He did change it enough where it's not immediately obvious that it's stolen. And the example that I always use when it comes to that is that Bill Hicks had a joke that was talking about he's like, I smoke so much I go through 2 lighters a day. Dennis Leary has a joke that goes, I smoke 2,000 cigarettes a day. Now, there's plenty of examples of uh, other material that Dennis Leary took from Bill Hicks. But that right there highlights why I call it pirated material instead of stolen material, because he took it and watered it down. He did. I'm not saying Dennis Leary doesn't have talent, because he does. He's a good actor. He's I've enjoyed a lot of the songs that he put out in his early comedy days. I did. I will fully admit that. And I actually own the first 3 seasons of Rescue Me on DVD, because to me that was a fantastic show. The concept of the show, even before 9/11 happened, and just showing kind of the day-to-day life of, any type of first responders, whether it would be firefighters, police officers, that kind of thing, and doing it in a very serious, grounded way, was not something we had seen very often. Usually it's the people that police go after that we see. It's shows like Cops and stuff like that. But this was something a little bit different because it was Rescue Me. Anyway, getting off topic, we are talking about Louis C.K. We did kind of talk about a little bit. He's actually done quite a bit of filmmaking throughout his career. I just caught this. Apparently, he was on the show Home Movies, which I did not know that. That is actually quite interesting. For those of you who aren't sure what Home Movies are, it was a cartoon, fairly old now. I can't remember exactly how old. It says it was on in 2022, so probably not as old as I'm thinking it is. But the guy who made the show Home Movies, which in and of itself was a show about a bunch of kids attempting to make movies. Um, he went on to made the show Metalocalypse, which was about the band Death Clock, who I still say is one of the best fictional bands of all time. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think of like how he would have been fit into being in an episode of Metalocalypse, to be completely honest, because he's already got a little bit of experience working with that guy. So I wonder if that would ever be a thing. But he was amongst the writing staff of the sketch comedy show Cedric the Entertainer Presents. How many people remember Cedric the Entertainer? I really wonder that. How many people remember? Because I remember quite a bit of him, and I thought he was completely, essentially gone from the world of entertainment until and I want to put this into very heavy quotations, got called out by Cat Williams. I thought he was just not in it anymore. Maybe coming in to do like an occasional cameo or something like that. But yeah, I did not even know he was really around anymore. But uh, he he wrote and directed the feature film Pootie Tang, which, is it weird that I've never seen that movie? I've seen it advertised, and I've seen like the DVD box and stuff like that. For some reason, it's just not a movie that I've ever felt the need to watch, and I'm not sure why. Uh, which was an adaptation of the sketch that was featured on the Rock Show and featured Chris Rock in a supporting role. The film received largely negative reviews from critics, but has become a cult classic. And I love cult movies, so you think it'd be right up my alley. In a half-star review, Roger Ebert declared it a train wreck and felt the film was not in reasonable condition. Though CK is credited as the director, he was fired at the end of filming, with the film being re-edited by the studio. CK has since co-written 2 screenplays with Rock, Down to Earth and I Think I Love My Wife in 2000, Down to Earth 2001 and I Think I Love My Wife 2007. His first comedy album, Live in Houston, was released in 2001. In 2002, he voiced Brendan Small's estranged father, Andrew Smalls, in the animated sitcom Home Movies. CK was among the writing staff for the sketch comedy show Cedric the Entertainer Presents. So, yeah. I have a hard time when somebody gets fired off of a movie when it comes to an end and then it's completely edited by somebody else. I have a hard time blaming the director in this case, which would be Louis C.K, for the movie not turning out great. Because when you're directing a movie, you're directing it thinking along the lines of something, and somebody else might see what you film from that and take it in a completely different direction. Lucky Louie and Stand Up Breakthrough. In August 2005, CK starred in a half-hour HBO special, which was actually almost what we picked for today's viewing. Part of the stand-up series One Night Stand, which is a fantastic series, by the way. If you ever get a chance to watch any of the One Night Stands, I highly recommend it. Caroline Rhea, I think, might be my favorite HBO One Night Stand, in my personal opinion, but there's a ton of them out there. So I think that, to be fair, I think part of that reason is because Caroline Rhea is one of my favorite female stand-up comedians, and that's like the closest we've ever really gotten to a special from her. So anyway, inspired by the work ethic of fellow comedian George Carlin, who had committed to dropping all of his existing material and starting over every year. In June 2006, CK starred in and wrote Lucky Louie, a sitcom he created. The series premiered on HBO and was videotaped in front of a studio audience. It was HBO's first series in that format. Lucky Louie is described as a blatantly realistic portrayal of family life. HBO canceled the series after its first season. I'm just going to say it. Truth be told, the whole family dynamic sitcom, well overdone. Well overdone. We've seen it from a lot of different angles. We've seen it where step-parents live close, or in-laws live close, in-laws live in the house, in-laws live far away. We've seen it focus on the parents. We've seen it focus on the kids. We've seen so many different ways people have cut that particular style of sitcom. It is, it kind of actually annoys me that it's something that happens so often. You know, even Mike and Molly had the idea, because Mike had his mother, Molly, of course, was living at home. They ended up living in Molly's place with her mom and everything, and it's way too overused. CK was part of the Opie and Anthony's traveling virus comedy tour with other comedians in 2007. In 2007, he hosted a 3-hour phone-in show on the service at the request of Opie and Anthony, during which he advised callers on their relationship troubles. During an interview with Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld on the show, CK repeatedly asked Rumsfeld whether he is in fact a reptilian space alien who eats Mexican beans. Rumsfeld declined to comment, and the video has since gone viral. He appears in 3 films in 2008, Welcome home Roscoe Jenkins, diminished capacity, and role models. See, this, repeatedly asking Rumsfeld if he was a reptilian, I'm sorry, that's something that I would have loved to have seen on The Daily Show at some point. I think that's a pretty funny idea. Just constantly asking a politician, are you a reptilian who likes to eat brains, let alone Mexican brains? Or, sorry, eat Mexican babies. Sorry. I had none of that right. But at the end of it, still, asking a politician, are you an alien? Such a stupid, funny idea. He launched his first hour-long comedy special, Shameless, in 2007, which aired on HBO, which was later released on DVD in March of 2008. He recorded a second hour-long special, Chewed Up, which premiered on Showtime Network on October 4th, 2008, and was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Comedy for Writing or Visual Variety Specials. C.K. and his wife, Alexi Bailey, divorced in 2008. I was not aware Louis C.K. was even married. That does make sense, though, because he does have a daughter and everything like that, but you don't necessarily need to be married in order to get one of those. With C.K. apparently sharing joint custody of their children. In 2010 interview, Louis C.K. talked about how after his divorce he thought, well, there goes my act. He alluded to the way that his marriage had been central to his act and his life, and he said that it took him approximately a year to realize I'm accumulating stories here that are worth telling. One element in his for comedy was training at the same boxing gym as Lowell, Massachusetts fighter Mickey Ward, trying to learn how to do the grunt work and the boring, constant training so that you'll be fit enough to take a beating. A clip from the appearance by C.K. on the Late Night with Conan O'Brien in 2008, titled Everything's Amazing and Nobody is Happy, became a viral hit on YouTube in 2009, helping his stand-up career propel forward. We can go on through a bunch of this, but I think right there kind of highlights a lot of a good chunk of his stuff, because especially if you're drawing on a particular part of your life as a comedian to bring stories together, if that part goes away, like for him it was getting divorced and stuff like that goes away, it becomes really hard. Like it is panic inducing to try and be like, where am I going to get my material now? Especially when that was a huge catalyst. Like, I have a friend and we talk a lot about our history and stuff like that, like things we went through when we were younger and things we got up to when we were younger and stuff like that. And a good chunk of my act from when I was an elder teenager, and even a younger teenager for that matter, he's been a person who's been like, do you remember that time? And oftentimes it's kind of one of those, oh my god, I remember that. I hadn't thought about that in so long that it was like out of my brain. And then it becomes a part. So just quick shout out. I want to say thank you to him, just, for that particular aspect. But like relationships, kids getting older, stuff like that, when that kind of stuff kind of leaves your little world bubble, it doesn't feel like you're going to recover from it. Shout out to him being at the Montreal Comedy Festival here. Let's just talk about more of his stand-up stuff. We already kind of talked about his misconduct revelation and the fallout that came after it. Again, excuse me. Again, he he lost a show. He lost a lot of things. Actually, as he it shows right here. In the wake of the scandal, CK suffered severe repercussions, stating in 2018 that the fallout had taken him through hell and back and cost him approximately $35 million in lost income. Um, Look, for most people, $35 million, for almost everybody, $35 million is a shit ton of lost money. Plain and simply going to say that. It sucks, but at that point, he was already making a fair bit of change. If he was smart with his money, he would have been able to coast on it, and it becomes one of those. It's hard. Like I say, I'm trying to be biased here. I'm trying to kind of sit on the middle of the fence because my opinion on the situation, not being a super fan of his, not being somebody who is a victim of his, my opinion of what happened, fucking irrelevant. Plain and simple. And his return to stand up in August of 2018. I do. One thing I will say at least is that it was an. Comedy clubs usually are relatively forgiving. For the most part, comedy clubs are relatively forgiving for a lot of things. There are limits. There are limits to how forgiving they will be, but they are relatively forgiving. And this is just kind of showing how a lot of people kind of criticized his return. And there's some people that were talking about his right to continue stand up. Excuse me so much. Um, that is something I will say is that now, if something happens again, if he, repeats his own history and then tries to return to stand up comedy again, at that point, your your comedy career card should be revoked. You went through it once. And yes, he was humiliated. Not trying to take away from anybody, because it is humiliating to know that pretty much the entire world now knows what you're into. That is a humiliating thing. Again, that does not mean he should, for what he did, his right to continue to be a stand-up comedian should not be taken away. If it had been worse than what he did, like what Bill Cosby did, I don't think Bill Cosby, in my opinion, should be able to practice stand-up comedian, or should be able to practice stand-up comedy. If I had a comedy club, I don't care how big of a name you are. If you're fucking Bill Cosby, you ain't coming into my club to perform. I will even have a hard time digesting the fact that I will let you come and sit at one of my fucking tables. That was not what he did, to be fair. No drugs were used or anything like that. So in that particular case, sure. I'm not letting you in the green room alone, but I'll let you come and perform at my club. That's all I'm saying on that. And it does show too, like, we know the routine. A person does something wrong, the person's humiliated. They'll they're exiled. They suffer. We want them to suffer. We love the the tumble, we love the crash, and begging of the fall, and then we love the crawl back, the grovel. Are you going to grovel? How long are you going to grovel? Seinfeld added. We, the court of public opinion, decide if he's going to come back. He's better. He better show a lot of pain because he denied the public that. And that is true. You know, anybody who goes through a sexual misconduct thing, there should be at least a little bit of suffering that goes on. Even if it is the most I don't even know what the most minor of aspects would be in that. Even in the most minor of aspects, but yeah, I think that it's important that because it's not only the person that did it that is going to be looking at it and being like, I fucked up, I shouldn't have done this. It's people looking from the outside in that may themselves end up in that same situation. It is a warning to people who are seeking fame or seeking for fame and fortune, or even if it's a byproduct of what they want to do with their lives. It's important to see, hey, you need to watch the path you walk, because if you don't watch the path you're walking on, this is what could possibly happen. Is it good that it is basically a threat in the same sense of jail or execution or that kind of thing? Is it good that it is that? I don't think it's good that it's that, because it would be really nice if we'd be able to kind of nip this off, cut the head off of this. But it is something that happens. And if what it's going to take for somebody else to not do this is the threat of something bad happening to you, then at least it's a way to prevent certain people from acting that way. Is it the best? No, but it's something. I have talked way too much about Louis C.K.'s sexual misconduct stuff. I think it's time we get into the special itself, because I really didn't want to talk that much about it, so I apologize. So, here we go. Louis C.K., The Lost Hour. I hope you guys enjoy. Sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in between and beyond. Welcome back. As it turned out, YouTube didn't like that one. YouTube is so freaking unpredictable when it comes to how they work their copyright thing. For anybody who's new to my live streams, this is the third one I've done. First Thursday of every month. Be there. But, yeah. Oh, hang on a second. I did click everything. Fantastic. Okay. Just making sure everything's recording and everything. Although it's showing on my live stream that maybe you're not hearing everything. Well, if you can hear me talking, can you please just say something in the chat, seeing as you're the only person watching right now? I know you said hello, and hello back. Not catching anything, so I'm assuming... Oh, there we go. Okay, I got confirmation. We're good then. But yeah, just for anybody who's new to my live streams and stuff like that, YouTube is super finicky when it comes to live streams, like in a very, very, very weird way. And thank you all for letting me know. My first live stream, it got hit. not that it was not that it was a copyright strike or anything. It just said, "Hey, we noticed that there's some copyrighted material in here." Then and that was Gallagher. When I did Janine Garofalo's, no issues whatsoever. YouTube was just like, "Yeah, you're fine." And now for this one, which I think may have been actually an edited together compilation of a bunch of different sets. Um, all of a sudden, YouTube is just like, um, no, no, we don't think we're gonna let you run this one. So I don't know. I don't know if YouTube's mad at me or not with that. I will have to take a look at my stuff, but that can wait until later. Um, before we start talking about the Louis C.K. thing, I got my second donation on my fundraiser, and I'm pretty sure the person who donated was not even watching. So thank you, Rob Ferguson. That's actually my general manager at my work. But thank you, Fergie, for donating 50 whole dollars. Alex was our first donation, but you are definitely not to be overlooked in this case. So during everything, Rob did send us a donation. Thank you so much, Rob, and I will thank you in person the next time I see you, because I know you're not going to be watching this. Um, but donating $50, dude's got kids and stuff like that. Like it, you know, donating that amount of money is just incredible to me, and I very much appreciate it. So, like I say, um, the donate if you want to donate, there is a link in my description. It will be on my YouTube channel very, very shortly. I'm planning on doing a video for it just to announce it, and then you guys can kind of share that around if you so choose. If you can't donate, which I understand, especially with inflation and everything, everything's really expensive. But if you know of anybody that might be willing to help out, by all means, please share the link around. Like I say, it is going directly to, because of certain um, sketchiness that certain other YouTubers have done. I've made this as streamlined as humanly possible. It all just is directly to the Cross Cancer Foundation. Um, and I am shaving my head for it as well, and I'm donating my hair to Angel Hair, which they make wigs for kids. If I remember correctly, it takes like 8 ponytails worth of hair and like $2,000 to make one wig for a kid. So if you do want to donate to something on top of donating, to the Alberta Cancer Foundation, by all means, you know, do so. But we've talked enough about that kind of thing. That's my thing. This is a Louis C.K. thing. And because YouTube did decide to kind of, kick us off our live stream, I actually took some notes about his set here, and just kind of wanted to go through a couple things. So he has his opening joke is about a Jewish guy trying to put a bag underneath the seat of a plane, and I was watching that, and it's a really awkward joke to try and start with. Like there is the standard when it comes to the standard when it comes to like how you structure your act usually as a stand-up comic is you put your second best joke in the beginning and your best joke kind of at the end, and that didn't feel like a starting joke. Although watching this particular set, and like I say, I'm pretty sure it was kind of cut and pasted together, even though it's called The Lost Hour. I'm pretty sure Mr. Matt Stone here may have cut it. I'm thinking a lot of it came from Louie's TV show, which we talked about that in our initial live stream. And all this will be edited together. I will usually do a slightly edited version where I take out all the material, so you'll be able to kind of hear me talk about his TV show if you want to check out the other one, or if you even want to go back to the part one of the live stream, which I was not expecting to do two parts of. But yeah, that struck me as being a little bit weird. He did one of the jokes that he did talk about. He talked about his daughter telling him jokes and being a comedian. You know, we hear a lot of jokes. He's like, I've heard every joke. Even if I haven't heard the joke, you start telling it to me, chances are I probably know where it's going to go. And that, although I don't agree with, because I have been very surprised by quite a few people, and I absolutely love stand-up comedy, and part of the fun of it is not knowing where a specific comedian, one comedian's going to take a joke in one direction, another one's going to take it in a completely different direction. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. That's part of the fun of stand-up comedy. But he was talking about his daughter telling him jokes that he loves because he's never expecting the punchline. That reminded me of something, and this is actually in my act, and this is a true story. So, I have a great niece. Her name's Brianna, my nephew's daughter. And she has come to the realization that her uncle is a stand-up comedian. And I love the fact that she has the realization that her uncle is a stand-up comedian. To me, that is one of the funniest things. And to answer the question, probably. So Wall asked, are you going to film your haircut? Probably. I'm at least going to be showing you guys before and afters if I'm not able to film it in and of itself, to answer that question. Um, I haven't, like I say, it's a year away, so I haven't set anything firmly in place yet, except for the fundraiser itself. So, anyway, but my great niece will tell me jokes, and some of them, she's a kid, so she's not structuring her jokes the way people normally structure their jokes. But she got me with this one, and god damn it, it made me lose my fucking mind because it was so funny. So she comes to me and she's like, Uncle Crazy, that's her nickname for me. A lot of people get Uncle and then their name. I get Uncle Crazy. So there. And it's mainly because I shove nails in my face and eat fire. So so there. So she goes, and she's tired, like she's getting ready for bed and everything like that. She's adorable, and she looks at me, and she's like, Uncle Crazy, I have a joke for you. And I'm like, yes, sweetie, because I want to encourage her, like enough people fucking shit on my dream of being a stand-up comedian. I don't want to be like that. I want to help her. I want to, encourage her, whatever the fuck she wants to do with her life. I want her to have the courage to do it. So of course I'm supportive. And I go, yes, sweetie, what is it? She goes, why can't you hear... And again, she's tired, so she's taking a second to kind of think about the joke. She goes, why can't you hear a pterodactyl in the bathroom? And of course, I've heard this joke 1,000 times. It's because the P is silent and everybody laughs. But of course, she's a kid. And I don't want to, ruin the punchline for her. So I'm just like, I don't know, sweetie. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl in the bathroom? And she looks at me with those big brown eyes and she goes, 'cause they're all dead. I have not laughed that hard in so goddamn long. That was the funniest fucking joke that she could have thrown at me. It was so, just to see that those big brown tired eyes go, 'cause they're all dead, was the funniest goddamn thing. And I kneel down and I look at her and I was just like, sweetie, you should not be funnier than me at 6. Just plain and simple, you should not be funnier than me at 6. She thought it was great. Um, Another part of the set, again, in the description of this, I actually have a link to the set. So if you want to check it out afterwards or even watch that and then watch this later, I'll probably keep the live stream up for at least a little bit until I can uh, pull it and edit it and everything like that. But another thing, and this seems like a really weird from one to the other kind of aspect, but he was talking about animals and stuff like that, and one of the first things he said was, coming on tits looks stupid to animals. And that in and of itself, very accurate, actually. Very, very accurate. Because for the most part, most animals don't have sex for pleasure. They're having sex for breeding purposes. And I know there is people that have breeding kinks, and then, that goes for them as well. For the most part, anyway. But for an animal to kind of watch us have sex and not finish inside of a person is a really weird thing. That also led to the whole having sex with animals thing. And so I have a little bit of a weird story about that kind of thing, because this is relatively early in my stand-up career. I was still doing open mic nights and stuff like that, and I have a very particular personal rule when it comes to comedy. I don't like to swear on stage. I will talk about any manner of things, with few exceptions, but I personally do not swear on stage. I can talk about some of the most disgusting concepts you can think of, but I will not swear on stage. The reasoning for it is two factors. Number one, when I first told my mom about wanting to be a stand-up comic, she made me promise two things. She would be 100% supportive of me if I would abide by two rules. Number one, don't talk about lady parts. That was her wording. And don't swear. Now, I talk about lady parts in my act, so I wasn't able to keep one of those promises. But I will eat my own asshole on a plate before I break that second promise to my mom. If I can keep one of those promises, I will. The second factor is the place that I've performed the most when it comes to stand-up comedy is a place in town here called the Comedy Factory. The owner of the place has, I wouldn't say a strict policy, because I've seen other people break it and him let them come back and stuff like that, but he has a policy of no F-bombs or worse on stage. Because for him, he doesn't have a liquor license like most comedy clubs. He has a restaurant license. Because of that restaurant license, that means that he can have under 18-year-olds come in. Also, a large part of his standard fans that tend to come into the club are older people. 60s, 70s, that kind of thing. He himself is an older guy, too, to be fair. Not that old, but, older. And he wants everybody to have a good time. So he does not allow F words or worse. You can say shit, you can say hell, you can say damn, that kind of thing. No F bombs or worse. So one night I was performing there, and it was at the open mic night that he used to run. It's changed now, so I can't say that he still runs quite the same thing. But and there was a comic, and he was literally right before me. Okay, I have to highlight this. He was right before me, and he told a bestiality joke. And that irritated me, not because he told a bestiality joke, because that was his final joke and I had to follow it. That was the thing that pissed me off. Because the audience did not like the joke, and now I have to follow it. As a comedian, one of the worst things you can do to another comedian. If you want other comics to hate you, this is the easiest way to do it. Dig a hole for them before they even get on stage. Put the audience in a shitty mindset, a mindset they don't want to be in. They're disgusted, they're pissed off. Put them into that mindset and then bring the other comic on. You will be making enemies very quickly in the world of comedy. Very quickly. I know as a comedian who does freak show magic and stuff like that, there are comics in town that have said as much. They do not want to follow me because at the end of my act, if I have about a 10-15 minute set, I'll do fire eating at the end of my set. And that in and of itself is hard to follow because you get a certain wow factor that just regular stand-up comedy can't get. So I try to limit the amount of fire eating that I do. However, I will say a lot of times ownership encourages me, hey, do your fire eating, because they like the wow factor for the audience. Now, so if another comic basically says, hey, do you mind switching places with me because I'm supposed to go on before them and they have to follow that, absolutely not a problem. You know, we can swap places. That doesn't bother me. I understand. But when you go from something really gross and then you're into a next comic, especially a comic who at the time was trying to do a lot more family-friendly stuff, this was not a good thing. So I got up on stage and I had about 35 seconds to try and figure out how the hell I was going to follow up. Because there's no way I can go on stage and not mention it. So I get up on stage. And I look at the audience, and they're not happy. They did the courtesy clap that you will see a lot of comedy audiences do. Welcome to the stage, and they're clapping and everything like that. But I was not getting anything more than the courtesy. And even at that, I don't think I was even getting full courtesy. So I get up on stage and I go, it's not going to be easy following that, but let's try. And it just so happened that I was looking at a lot of like old laws that are still on the books but not really enforced because they're stupid laws that aren't enforced and there's really no need to enforce them. So I happen to know a couple of things because of that. And my plan was I was going to somehow use that into my act. Never did. But I said, now, it's interesting. He mentioned the whole animal thing. And here's the thing. I'm not going to say where this is because if I do, I have a feeling somebody might move. But there are parts in this world where it is perfectly acceptable to have sex with an animal. It is not illegal. Like I said, not going to say where because that means that certain people in this room might be moving. But the weird part is how the law is stated is that you have to have alternative genitalia in order for it to be legal. So that's the message we're going for the kids, is it? You can have sex with an animal, that's fine. Just don't be gay about it. And of course, audience laughed and I moved on. Which is a really fucking stupid law. Like, this person's already having sex. And even Louis C.K. in his set that we were talking about was talking about ducks only have one hole. For a female duck, that's where she shits, that's where she pees, that's where she lays eggs, that's where she has sex. And at 40 years old, because ducks are monogamous, they have the same partner their entire lives. At 40 years old, that old duck is just going, I fucking hate this. Kind of a similar skew, So I guess I do have a little bit more in common with Louis C.K. than just the color of our hair. I'm also... He had a good chunk of his bit that was about jerking off. And knowing what we now know about him, there was a part in it where he was talking about living with a roommate in a one room apartment, and the roommate would be like, if you want to jerk off, just let me know and I'll leave for a while and stuff like that. Which now in hindsight we kind of look at and be like, wouldn't he be asking you to stay? Just a thought. But aside from that, I don't even want to, it, it, you know, really touch on that because we talked a lot about his sexual misconduct stuff way too much already. Um, he did also mention, and this was an interesting thing, is he was talking about inheritance. Like, he's not saving money for his kids, which I think is honestly a lie. Big shock, a lot of times comedians will bend the truth in order for something to be funnier. Just to let you guys know, like, my great niece, she is 5 years old now. Five? Yeah, yeah, she's 5 years old now. But I had a joke about my niece, like my sister's daughter, not my great niece, my nephew's daughter. She's in her 20s now, and I still occasionally will bust out a joke that I have about her, and I still talk about her like she's 6 years old. Because for the joke, she was 6 years old when it happened, and I make it sound like it happened last week. The joke is years old. Obviously, she's in her 20s now. So, just as a little insight into the world of the comedic's brain, but but he was talking about like inheritance and like kings taking over because another king passed away, and how do we know that person's not going to be an asshole? Well, if we've seen things, it doesn't matter if they're kings, queens, prime ministers, presidents, whatever. There's a good chance that they're probably an asshole. Especially if we look at the particular current history we are in. How the fuck we got into this timeline, I don't know, but Mandela effect, take me the fuck away from it. And then, of course, he talks about his kids and stuff like that quite a bit. I do find it funny, though, because there's a lot of comics who talk about who, and he talks about his having a sex drive and stuff like that in his set, and he's like, I don't really have a sex drive. I have more of a wait in the car and hope somebody gets in kind of sex drive, which that in and of itself is funny. But knowing what we know now is kind of it's kind of weird to hear him say that, knowing what we know now. I don't remember what my point about that was. Um, Another thing was he was talking about reading Huck Finn to his daughters, and he prefers reading Huck Finn as opposed to Tom Sawyer because Tom Sawyer uses the N word a lot. And yeah, reading a lot of classic literature is an incredibly hard thing. I gotta say it because they use terminology a lot of times that is not kosher, and it lands very differently. It's very hard to think about the way the original author was looking at it as opposed to how it's looked at now because we live in the world we live in now. But I also remember him having, and this was not the set where I saw the very first white comedian ever I had ever seen say the N word on stage. And I don't mean he said the N word, I mean he said the actual word. I'm not going to say it though. But it is. I personally would prefer not to hear that word. I do listen to quite a bit of rap music, and it is a lot. It is a very popular use in a lot of rap music. I'm not a particularly, I whatever the opposite of fan would be. That's what I am towards the N word. I would very much appreciate it if I could go the remainder of my life without hearing that word again. Just on the grounds that it is a word that it's an insanely ugly word. I know in rap music it's not usually meant in an ugly sense unless you're specifically directing it at another person and you're meaning for it to be insulting. I am well aware of that. But the creation of the word comes from an ugly place. And I'm trying not to, I don't want to get too political in this. And I don't want to talk a whole lot about this because I have something that I do want to end on. But yeah, the fact that Louis C.K. has the cojones to say it in this would be the second time I've seen him say it in a particular bit, and they're not the same bit, so I know it's different things. I don't even know how to process that, to be completely honest, because he is saying it in a particular context. He's not directing it at anybody. It's particular context, and is it okay? Is it not okay? For me, it's not okay because even if I was the one writing those particular jokes, I still wouldn't say it on personal grounds. Like I say, even if I'm quoting somebody, unless I was in court having to give a verbatim quote that somebody else said, I would not say that particular word. That is how far away it is out of my particular lexicon. And that's where I'm going to leave that one. Because there's no way I can make that funny. Close to the end of this thing, though, he did have a really funny bit. He was talking about giving his daughter bubblegum flavored medicine because she had a fever. And the second he tries to give it to her, she's like, ew. And he's like, you fucking bitch. You, like, how, it's gross. It's gross. You know what I mean? It's weird. There's like oh, okay. I see what was popping up there. He's like, some people in this world don't even have medicine, let alone, you know? And it's like, yeah, I totally get that. And genetically speaking, I myself do not have kids. That doesn't mean that I haven't helped raise some kids. And I do know how stupid that you feel stupid when you're a parent trying to give your kids flavor, like it's medicine. It's something that's going to make them feel better. That should be enough to be like, take this, you'll feel better. But that's not enough for kids. It's we have to. Louis C.K. said it pretty well when he said, "Let's make it taste like candy, and then maybe kids will have it." I didn't have that kind of. First of all, the only flavored medicine I ever got when I was a kid was the stuff that was supposed to taste like bananas. If you're in your 30s or older, you remember the medicine that supposedly tasted like bananas. That shit did not taste like. I don't know what bananas the creators of that shit were eating. That shit did not taste like bananas. It tasted like potassium and peroxide. It was what it tasted like. Plain and simply. And now they have medicine that tastes like bubble gum. And kids still won't take it. They'd rather suffer through this sickness. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because for a kid, what is time? If they're sick, if they're old enough to go to school, I don't have to go to school. I'm cool with that. For an adult, there is a breaking point where it's like, oh, I'm sick. I don't have to go to work. Oh, yeah, I don't have to go to work today because I'm sick. But once you hit like 2, 3, maybe 4 days of not being able to go to work because you're sick, you start hitting that, oh, my check is gonna suck moment. And you are doing anything and everything to try and make yourself better just so that you can hopefully peel your ass out of bed and shower and look presentable enough just to show up. Because at least 2-3 hours worth of pay and getting sent home because you're sick is still better than getting no pay because you're sick. And if you're hearing me say this and you're sitting there going, fuck, I hate being sick and having to call into work, I do too. In the past almost 3 years at my current job as a cook, I have called in sick a grand total of 3 times. One time because I thought I had COVID. One time because I did have COVID. That sucked. Thinking I had COVID, that didn't suck. It was very minor cold, but I didn't want to take chances. I got checked out, turned out I didn't have COVID. Lost a week of work there, unfortunately. Got COVID, lost 2 weeks of work there. And then I called in sick again because essentially my arm was fucking useless. I could not raise my arm more than a couple inches off of like my hip kind of thing. Like my elbow contacting my hip kind of thing. And then raising it a few inches. I could not raise it past that. My right arm was fucking dead, basically. And I called in sick for that. So if you're sitting there wondering, why is it I don't, and this is true, I tend not to really get sick very often. I don't know what my trick is. I really don't. I wish I did. But I will say I eat a lot of garlic and onions and hot sauce. All 3 of those things are very prevalent in my diet. I also consume a fair bit of honey. Not a shit ton, but I try to get at least a little bit in me every single week. Because from my understanding, hot sauce and honey will actually encourage the growth of white blood cells. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea if that's true. That is my understanding. And I've also heard that garlic and onions can also do the same thing. Again, not a doctor. Do not look at me for medical advice. Okay? I don't have a PhD. And I'm pretty sure if I ever attempted to go to medical school, I would get laughed out of there within the next 2 hours. So, don't come to me for medical advice. I'm just saying that's what I do. And if you have a habit of getting sick fairly often, maybe just adding a little garlic, onions, some honey, and a little hot sauce to your personal eating habits might help. If you're allergic to any of those things, don't do that because it will do the opposite of help. Now, that all being said, kind of a final thought on Louis C.K. He's very funny. Plain and simply, he is a very funny comedian. He is an extremely good writer when it comes to writing because his brain does kind of work in weird tangents where he starts going down one line and it is a very cohesive, well put together thought, and then all of a sudden it just kind of escalates and goes a completely different direction. I love that style of humor. I love when somebody can go from one thing to another and use the tail end of one thing to go into another subject matter. Very hard to do, and I even fail at doing it fairly often in my act. But I can usually find a way of kind of, if not sewing things together, at least paper clipping it together. Is it the best thing to hold your papers together? No. Can it work? Absolutely. So, I feel that is an important thing. All in all, I like his material. Him as a person, he seems like a nice enough guy, except for the whole wanting to jerk off in front of people and picking the wrong people to ask if he can jerk off in front of them. That is also something that he's not great at. We'll put it that way. But aside from that, he seems like an okay person and very, very funny material. Um, I was very surprised to see him this early on our list of 100 stand-up comics. So, you know, I started this not really realizing that I was going to have somebody quite as funny as him early on in the list. But here we are. Um, so as I say, Comedy Central's top 100 stand-up comedians. As a matter of fact, I will pull that up. There we go. We'll just pull up the IMDb version of it. There we go. So our next one is Sandra Bernhard. I'm actually looking forward to that. I do actually enjoy her. I am also looking forward to Andrew Dice Clay. That's going to be a fun one. The most non-politically correct stand-up comedian of all time. Joey Bishop, I've, I've heard the name, but I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen him doing stand-up. And Sandra Bernhard, yeah, it's going to be fun. But Louis C.K. here, very funny stuff. I enjoyed it. I will definitely watch more of his material. I have watched quite a bit of his material, so I'm definitely going to watch more of it. And we are going to go through eventually the entirety of our list here. There's quite a few guys that I'm looking forward to. George Wallace is one of them. Louis Anderson is one of them. Jim Breuer is one of them. Dana Carvey is definitely one of them. Kevin James, Paula Poundstone. I know her. I don't know a lot about her. David Cross, definitely. So I could go through this list and basically be like, yes, 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 all of these guys. However, as a heads up, if you guys want to do the math on which comedian is supposed to be for our December one, that is up to you. But whoever it would be is not going to be the comic on this list. The the person I'm actually going to be taking a look at, Harry Anderson, very funny comedic magician. That's going to be my personal little birthday present to myself on this channel, because I absolutely love his special. It is one of the best comedy and magic specials I have ever seen. He's up there with the likes of Tommy Cooper, The Amazing Jonathan, Penn and Teller, that kind of thing. Penn and Teller obviously do not hammer so much on the stand-up comedy or on the comedy side of things. They definitely have some funny bits, but Harry Anderson definitely in the top 3 best comedy magicians I've ever seen in my entire life. Who would be 1, 2, and 3 in that exact order? Because I did say my top 3 favorites, which is Harry Anderson, The Amazing Jonathan, and Tommy Cooper. Given the day, it would definitely depend, because all 3 of them are fantastic for different reasons. The Amazing Jonathan took the weird, wacky, quirky, and blood that you would think of. His stuff is almost like having a one-man horror movie, but with an assistant. It's weird to explain his material now that I come to think of it, but it's very interesting. A lot of fake blood, a lot of stage blood, so it's really interesting to watch, kind of horrifying. So you're not so much a fan of stand-up comedy and you're a fan of scary movies, he might be somebody you want to check out. Tommy Cooper, very old school style magician, one of the early kind of bumbling magicians, at least as far as media goes on television and stuff like that. I'm not saying he was the first, just one of the first ones, at least that was on television and stuff like that. And Harry Anderson, uh, very. What would he? The way I would describe his material is what would happen if you tried to combine a New York style street hustler with your standard top hat and tails type of magician, and you get Harry Anderson. Not only that, but Harry Anderson was also a pretty good actor. He was actually the judge on the show Night Court. Pretty sure I've talked about him before on other live streams, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that I plan on doing him for December as well. But I thought I'd bring it up again just to be on the safe side. Just to be on the safe side. But now that I've said everything and I've kind of gone over his material, and like I say, if you want, sorry, YouTube kind of decided to cut off my live stream because of that kind of stuff. If they do it again, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to watch the special beforehand, then kind of go into everything and just have the live stream without the special and just put a link in the description and everything like that. Because I don't want YouTube to hate me. YouTube, I'm sure, already has probably problem with me because I do so many comedy-based video games, and a lot of comedy-based video games center around sex, and a lot of my other games have a lot of violence in them, like the Postal series, and of course 7 Days to Die. You're literally always shooting zombies and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure YouTube is not a huge fan of me as it sits right now. So hopefully we can get into YouTube's good graces before I actually start getting monetized on my channel. If I'll ever actually get monetized on my channel. Here's hoping. But thank you all so much for being here. This was a very, very fun one and a very long one. We had a little bit of some technical difficulties at the beginning of it, so it was kind of a bit of a false start to some of it. So I do apologize for that. I will also apologize to YouTube. Sorry, YouTube, didn't mean to make you mad. And just trying to do something a little different to, watch some stuff with some friends and stuff like that. So I apologize, YouTube. But that all being said, thank you all so much for joining me on this particular live stream, this particular Let's Laugh. I will hopefully see you all in the next one. Like I said, next one's Sandra Bernhard, so this is going to be fun. Thank you all again. Always remember, don't do anything I wouldn't do. You should probably stay away from most of the things that I would do. And always remember, take care and keep laughing.